John?
Almost.
Almost.
Are we up? Oh, this is not really small. Holy smokes. Good evening and welcome to this Tuesday, August 16th, 2016 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, it looks like it was blue shirt night, but a few of us didn't get the memo. I know, not me either. I'll call roll. Commissioner Anderson,
Present.
Commissioner Berenson,
Present.
Commissioner Bowie, Commissioner Crane,
Present.
Commissioner Pfizer,
Present.
Commissioner Meiske,
Present.
Commissioner Sarsfield, and Mayor Turnbow,
Present.
and Commissioner Faulkner is present. We do have a quorum. Let's see, no personal appearances this evening. Let me remind you, as always, be sure to speak into the microphone and have it turned on so we get you for the record. We have one item on the consent agenda this evening, acceptance of minutes from our July 19th, 2016 meeting. And I would entertain a motion to accept minutes of the July 19th meeting as presented this evening.
So moved.
Chairman,
Who did second? Oh, sorry.
real quick,
Mr. Zerk.
I apologize for interrupting. I want to make sure and note in there, it indicates for the agenda for this evening, the old business as being none. I know you're going to be approving the minutes here at this particular point, but I want to make sure that we also note in there for this evening's agenda, the old business, we'll actually have one item on that old agenda at some point or another when we get there. I apologize for the
Okay,
interruption though with regard to the
I'm
minutes.
sorry, you've lost me entirely, case 16010.
If you look right above that, and I apologize because I interjected this during the course of the minutes. I wanted to do so before we travel too far in.
Yeah,
On
yeah.
this evening's agenda, if you look up under old business, it does indicate none. That should be removed from that.
Oh, I'm
portion,
sorry. I see the
location.
none, but
That
none,
does
but
not-
there is a case.
That does not impact this evening with regard to your minutes. I just want
Yeah.
to make sure and interject that
No,
in there for our
gotcha.
purposes.
Thank you. I actually just breezed right through that. Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Anderson to accept minutes of the July 19th meeting as presented. Did I hear a second?
No, I'll second.
Okay, sorry. And a second by Commissioner Meiske. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favor, any opposed, and Commissioner Crane
I'm not opposed. I just
abstaining. Yeah, so 6 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstention, Commissioner Crane. And now that takes us into old business. And thank you, Mr. Zer. I had actually missed that. I'm slipping. So under old business this evening, case 16010, a request to permanently close and remove the access drive from 1918 West Foxwood Drive to Missouri 58, known as the former Ryan's site. And I presume, Mr. Carteret, since city is the applicant, that you'll present this case?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you.
This case is a public hearing, so we will need to handle it in that matter. Mr. Crass, Public Works Director for the city, is here as well. Since the city is the applicant for this request. So I'm going to be real brief in my comments and explain to you why this particular request that you did consider previously is back on your agenda. This case, 16010, Again, a city application and a specific request for permanent closure and removal of the access drive from 58 Highway to the property located at 1918 West Foxwood Drive. This property was formerly occupied by the Ryan's Restaurant, which has subsequently closed on the property. The property owner is Realty Income Corporation. They own the property where the Ryan's building is located at. Planning Commission considered this request back on June 21st, and at that meeting, by a 6-0 vote, you did recommend to the City Council that this access drive be permanently closed and removed. That was your recommendation that went on to the City Council for their consideration on July 11th. On July 11th, the City Council voted 8-0 to remand this case back to the Planning Commission to allow for further consideration of public testimony. So what I'd like to do tonight is explain why that was remanded back to you, what the background is of that. I've got a few things to hopefully put on your screen. Hopefully everybody will be able to see it. Prior to that meeting on July 11th, Mr. Krass and I sat down to prepare for that public hearing, did if you would, kind of a final review of the documents we had on file. We wanted to look closely at everything. We had a couple of property surveys. We had an easement document for there's an easement that is along the east side of the property. And as we both started looking at that, it became somewhat apparent to us as we looked at the survey. We both have a lot of experience in looking at surveys in quite some detail. Of course, Mr. Krass, being an engineer, has considerable experience in this. But we noticed we were looking at a specific Alta survey that was done for the property back in 2006. And the Alta survey showed very specific improvements on the property. Very detailed survey, shows the perimeter boundary. This is not a platted lot, so it had an actual meets and bounds description outlining the perimeter of the property, showed all the details of all the improvements on it. As we looked at that survey, and I will bring that up on your screen here so you'll see, this was the survey document that I'm referencing. This was done in 2006. So it gives the actual legal description and a lot of other information, but I want to focus on one specific part of this survey, so I'll zoom in a little bit. What's important here, so what we're looking at on the screen here, this is Kentucky Road, and of course on the bottom of the screen is 58 Highway. Where I'm pointing at this point is an actual section quarter. So it's actually a section quarter, if you would, in the middle of the intersection of Kentucky Road and 58 Highway. The survey itself, what you see as the point of beginning, is actually a total of 40 foot to the east of that section quarter. The point of beginning is very important when you look at the survey itself, because that is where, when we look at the legal description that's done, that is where the survey begins. And what's important here to note is you'll see the point of beginning, and they're saying that point is the southwest quarter of that section. In reality, it is not. What they're showing as the point of beginning is 40 feet, we believed was 40 feet to the east of the actual section quarter. It just kind of jumped out at the both of us as, what are we missing here? Again, we're not licensed surveyors. We thought it just didn't look right. The actual legal description, again, indicated that the survey began at the section quarter. And the drawing wasn't illustrating that. So we quickly contacted, the city has a licensed surveyor on contract, Mr. Mike Huffman. He's done a number of surveys that you've seen over the years, to simply review the documents that we had. We didn't ask him to survey it. We said, simply review what documents we have and give us your opinion of what it says. We didn't really lead him on as to what our concern was. We just said, we want your review of this description. Does it match? And he came back with a written transmittal to the city that indicated that the point of beginning, in his opinion, the point of beginning is 40 foot from the east of where it should be. What that really means is so the entire property boundary has been shifted 40 foot to the east. So as we look at the other side of the property, this is the access drive. There's the Ryan's Restaurant building. they're showing the eastern boundary of this property to be east of the access drive. So when we started talking through this, we figured, well, if that survey has been shifted 40 foot to the east, it needs to come back 40 foot to the west, and where does that put that property line itself? We believe it puts it back into the actual access area. And so now we were talking about having a public hearing. We've already had a public hearing to close an access drive. We've only notified the property owner of the Ryan's property. We did not notify the property owner of the land to the east. We also came across one other document that helped us illustrate this a little bit in our own mind. This is a drawing that Ryan's had submitted when they actually constructed this access drive. Again, if you remember in the testimony back at the first public hearing, Ryan's initially had 2 access drives on Kentucky, and then when 58 was widened, the access drive was relocated to the east. And what we're seeing here is this drawing is reflecting, as we believe, where the property line is. You can see it's right down the middle of the driveway here, and they actually then constructed a curb line that went onto the adjacent property. We believe that, there was discussions with that property owner, who happened to be the Dean family at the time. They owned the land at the time to the east, and they owned the land to the north. And they actually had sold some additional land to Ryan's to allow Ryan's to be built. And when they sold that additional land, they had an access easement provided. So I think the thought was, when this drawing was all submitted, is that the easement covered the additional road going over onto the additional property, and it was to be a combined access drive. When in reality, the easement is entirely upon the Ryan's property. So that the access easement for the Dean property and for the land to the north is actually the east 30 foot of the Ryan's property. So the access drive itself is not, the east part of this access drive is not covered by an easement. It is simply constructed on the adjoining property. So what we have done, again, based upon that information, the information from Mr. Huffman, we decided to recommend to City Council to remand it back to the Planning Commission to reopen the public hearing. We provided a due notice to the easement holder and the property owner to the east, which is no longer the Dean family, but it is now a partnership. It's under the legal name of North Raymore 58 Equity Partners. Some of the partners in the Block Real Estate firm are partners in this LLC. So we provided a due notice to them of tonight's hearing. We provided a new notice to the owner of the Ryan's property and of the public hearing this evening, and indicated to both that what we're going to do is open it up to provide the ability for that property owner that has impacted the North 58 Equity Partnership to be here to provide any input they may have. I have had verbal discussions with one of the partners, but nothing since that discussion, just to advise them of why we were going to they were certainly aware of the first hearing, just from hearsay, but we wanted to make them officially notified that we were going to have this public hearing. I have not heard from them since that verbal discussion. We have also, again, re-advertised legally in the Raymore Journal as we are required. So that's the sum total of why it was remanded back to you. Again, and Mr. Zur can add a little bit to that, again, just making sure that we provide due notice to all the property owners. So from my standpoint, that closes my comments. I don't know, Mr. Zur, if you wanted to comment at all on the notice.
I am happy to answer any questions that the commission might have. From my perspective, it was important for us to remand this back in order to reopen the public hearing, allowing the individual property owners or interest holders in the easement, as well as the property to the east, to have the chance to come in order to speak with us. The property owners for Ryan's, I have had the opportunity to speak with their legal counsel and have advised them as to the basis for this relatively recently. So they have been both notified by Mr. Cataract as well as by our conversation, a telephone conversation follow-up. My only goal for the evening is to make sure that the appropriate notice has been provided to all the interested party holders.
Thank you, Mr. Zur. So before we get any further into the case, let me open the public hearing on case 16010, closure of Ryan's Access also called request to permanently close and remove access from 1918 West Foxwood Drive to Missouri 58. And anyone in the public that wishes to speak, please
That will be
come-
to reopen the public hearing?
Oh, to reopen, thank you. Anyone in the public that wishes to speak on this case, please come forward to the podium. And seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and open the floor for any discussion by the commission.
Mr. Chair,
Uh,
over here.
oh,
Hi.
hi.
Mr.
Mayor
Zerg,
Turnbull.
the gentleman that gave testimony at the previous meeting that we had the public hearing, did he give you any indication as to whether or not he was going to let his previous comments ride, or is there any additional objection?
It is my understanding that the previous testimony is part of the record already for consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Most recent conversation I had did not indicate that he was going to be coming back down here, barring specific instruction from his client. Otherwise, I would anticipate we would have seen him at this particular point.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Other questions, comments? Commissioner Anderson?
Yeah, Mr. Ketter, I'm looking through the notes here. Unless I'm missing it, I don't see any reference that you actually contacted the property owner.
We did send a new notice to the property owner for tonight's hearing.
Okay.
Yes.
So is that captured in here? I know you spoke about it, but I don't see it in the minutes here in terms of the staff action since after the council remanded.
Yes.
I know you verbally, so in terms of, what you did, I don't see it captured here in the notes.
Yeah, I didn't add anything in the written staff report on the new notice going out. We did send notice again to both property owners that are impacted, as well as republished a legal notice,
Okay.
which should actually be reflected in this report. I need to add that to the report.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll add that prior to if we have a recommendation this evening, prior to council consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Anyone brave enough to make a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Anderson?
I make a motion that we accept the staff proposed findings of fact for case 16010, permanent closure and removal of the access drive from 1918 West Foxwood Drive to 58 Highway to the City Council with a recommendation to permanently close and remove the access drive.
Second. Was that Commissioner Meiske? Sorry. Crane? Blue shirts all sound alike. Thank you, Commissioner Crane. All right, sorry. So we have a motion by Commissioner Anderson, second by Commissioner Crane, to accept staff proposed findings of fact and forward case 16010 to City Council with the recommendation to permanently close and remove the access drive. Close enough. Any further discussion on the motion?
Is there no way to drag Mr. Crass into this? He's gonna get away without having to say anything. What's up with that?
I'm sure that there probably is, but the only way I would know how to drag him in is not very subtle, and it's like, well, Mr. Crass, you've been usually quiet this evening. Would you like to add anything regarding case 16010? Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
That's as close as I can come. Commissioner Berenson.
I have one, wow, that's loud. I have one quick question. Once this gets approved by council, how long will it take to close this?
Oh, an official answer, okay.
The reason I ask is I've talked to some people about this, and there is a lot of support to close this
Oh, yeah.
due to safety and accidents.
Yeah, well, we've succeeded in bringing Mr. Krass to the podium to answer that, so thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. As part of the recent general obligation bond election, the voters approved some maintenance work on 58 Highway, including mill and overlay, curb repairs, some sidewalk repairs, some other much-needed repairs along there. In anticipation of an affirmative recommendation from the commission and the council, we did include this work in the project. We have received bids for the project and anticipate bringing forward a recommendation for the contract award for the project to council in September. So if we move forward, it would be sometime in October that the work would occur.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krass. Are there any further questions before we take a vote on the motion? All right. So the motion is to accept staff proposed findings of fact and forward the case to City Council with the recommendation to permanently close and remove the access drive. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 4, 5, 6, 7. And I have 7 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. So once again, that motion carries. And we have provided opportunity for the hearing. All right. And that takes us to new business, of which there is none this evening. And so, Mr. Zur, if you would, give us the City Council report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd be happy to provide that. It's a pleasure always to come down in order to participate in the Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Raymore. Since our last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, we've had 2 City Council meetings, only one of which would have items of note for the Planning and Zoning Commission. So those 2 council meetings included July 25th, 2016, and a second one that occurred August 8th, 2016. In my review of the August 8th, although great work was done by your City Council, I did not identify anything specifically related to your Planning and Zoning Commission, so I will focus my attention on the July 25th hearing meetings. On the July 25th City Council meeting, there were a number of items of particular interest for this commission based upon the fact that you all have seen these items. The first was a second reading of the modification to development standards for Shadowwood Phase 2. You might recall that this was an alteration by the developer in order to remove the rear drive and rear access through alleyway into the Shadowwood Phase 2, which allowed for back-facing garages. It also changed the front yard setback so that it would be a more traditional front yard, backyard, and driveway in the front with garage door in the front. It also adjusted the maximum floor area allowed. That modification development standards for Shadowwood Phase 2 did receive approval from the City Council. The second item was a replat of the Shadowwood Phase 2. Similarly, this allowed for a refiguring of or reconfiguring of a couple of lots within the Shadowwood Phase 2 so that it decreased it from 19 lots down to 13 lots. And this was changing of lot lines within that cul-de-sac within the Phase 2 that you might recall. Those are 2 of the big items that I've got. We also have an award of contract for the 2016 sidewalk project. I know that members of this commission have been interested in the sidewalk installations over time. And I would also note for you that the council approved a contract award for recreation park shade structures and a budget amendment for the same. So those of you who are interested in parks and recs within the city will have an opportunity at Recreation Park Baseball Complex to have some really exciting new shade structures that will allow for continued safe use by spectators within the baseball park. Those are the items that I identified from our council meeting that occurred on July 25th, 2016. And as always, Mayor Turnbow was present. I would invite his input if he thinks I may have missed something.
I've got a couple of items, but I'll bring them up when I report it to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zur. And Mr. Ketteret, that'll take us on into staff report, if you would.
Yes, sir, thank you. Want to start this evening, be real brief, but just talk a little bit about building activity that's occurring. I made a report to City Council. I just found it interesting. I certainly knew that single-family home activity is It's pretty active right now within the city of Raymore. Last month in July, and I gave you this building activity report, but you know, we issued 32 single-family permits in the month of July. That's the most we've issued in a month since August of 2006. So it's been 10 years since we've actually had the kind of activity that we currently have. And we've already reached 124 calendar year to date, which far exceeds what we had budgeted and had anticipated happening. And here in August, we're not going to probably reach the 32 number, but we're having another strong month in August. So residential activity, very active. Commercial activity, you've all certainly seen the property there. It's referred to as the Raymore Marketplace, will be the official name, but the former Dean property, a lot of site grading going on. We have approved the construction plans for the retail shell building, not the tenant finishes, but that gets them going on building construction while they finalize their plans for the tenants. We already know that they've announced K Jewelers, which will be submitting their tenant finish plans here shortly. And then the lot in the middle is the sit-down restaurant, the Qdoba restaurant, where they have submitted their plans as well, so they have their building plans approved. The lot to the east, remember that was not part of the site plan that we approved, so as that project moves along, and they are moving along, they're getting prepared to submit site plan for that lot. You'll see that site plan prior to any more activity than what you see. It certainly is allowable for them to do all the site grading. They certainly just could not start any construction on that lot. So it's good to see all that activity at that location. Looking at your calendar for the next couple of meetings, we will have a public hearing on September 6th. This will be the presentation by the city manager of the capital improvement program. Each year, he presents the CIP to the commission for your review and comments and analysis. And then on September 20th, we'll have a public hearing that evening. Ms. Hawk, our assistant city manager, will be back before you, this time presenting the proposed recreational activity center. We have to go through the conditional use permit process first, get any new public building, no matter where it's built in the city, goes through this conditional use permit process. So we'll go through that, hear from some of the Shadowwood neighbors and some of the other residents that are more directly impacted by the structure going there. And then the next step would be a site plan approval. This facility is proposed to be located at Recreation Park, close to the entrance to the Recreation Park, almost between the house, the existing park house, and the entrance drive to Recreation Park. There's a large field there utilized for small soccer practices and for overflow parking for the fireworks show, if anybody's been to that. But that'll be kind of the grand entrance to the Recreation Park, will be this proposed activity center. So we're excited to share those plans with you, and again, Ms. Hawk will present those to you then. And it looks like our October calendar is probably going to fill up as well, so we may have some consistent meetings here going on with activities. As I already mentioned, the pad site there at the marketplace will be coming forward. And we anticipate at least one, possibly two phases in the Creekmore subdivision to move forward as well, to continue to expand that subdivision. So a lot happening there as far as activity for the commission. And one other comment, not directly related to your business, but we've had discussions before about the Community for All Ages initiative. And today was the first meeting of our actual task force, where we have a number of residents that volunteered their time to help us with the community assessment phase. So we went through the awareness phase of the program, which got us our bronze recognition. Step 2 is assessment, where we're looking at city's policies, programs, and just doing an assessment of those policies and programs on its impact on us being a community for all ages. It's not really a scorecard, but it lets us know what we're doing well. It lets us know what we're not doing well, and maybe some voids in programs that we have. And so we'll do a report at the end of the assessment that will then guide us on an action plan, which will be our third step. We have a goal of finishing this assessment phase by November 1st, which is the deadline to submit for silver level recognition. And then we'll if we achieve that, we'll immediately begin working on the action plan. So we have just a few residents that volunteered. We wanted to keep it a small core group. So we really haven't advertised a lot about the task force. These were individuals that participated in earlier activities that we had and showed a commitment. And trying to work around everyone's schedule, it is difficult, some can meet days, some can meet nights, et cetera. But we have, we think, a decent group to move forward, and today was our first meeting. So we're excited about that, and I move that work forward. At some point in time, I'm sure it'll come across your desk as far as having some type of action, whether it be a review of the report or certainly the plan that's produced. So stay tuned for that. But that would conclude my comments at this time.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
can I ask a
Commissioner
question,
Crane.
Jim? Is the park house going to stay, or will it be torn down?
It actually will be removed. That is the
will
plan
be
to
removed.
remove that structure. Once the new structure is completed and operational, then we'll go back. And it's served us well, but it's certainly outlived its, as we have grown since it first came into being. It was time to replace it.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Ketteret. I'll open the floor to the public if anyone wishes to comment on anything. And seeing none, we'll move along to commission member comment. And since I know you have something to say, I think I'll start with Mayor Turnbow this evening.
Well, a lot of great things going on. We've, one of the things that's always ugly is passing taxes for purposes of moving our sewage out, or taking care of it. But recently, as a member of the Little Blue Valley Sewer District, we're one of 13 entities of 10 that had to approve a $20 million bond issue for them to make improvements under EPA standards to their sludge removal and incinerator facility that they have down there at the Atherton plant. They have received, I think to date, 6 yes votes of the 10 necessary to do that. We were one of the yes votes, seeing the advantages to them being able to upgrade the facility, which is now 10 years old, in order for us to move forward and remain within the EPA standards for that. So that was a step forward for us to continue to use that facility and the Middle Big Creek, of which a portion of our jurisdiction sends their sewage to, as Middle Big Creek is a subdivision of Little Blue Valley Sewer District. With that said, at a work session, the council has proposed 8 members from the council, 1 from myself, for the Charter Commission. That's not yet been finalized by resolution yet, but we hope to attack that fairly soon in a session at the next council meeting, Mr. Zur, that it's going to be on the agenda, and we'll appoint those individuals. So that Charter Commission will then meet in September. I think it's September 8th is the first meeting that they're going to have, where they will select a chairperson, and then they'll move forward with their charge to review the charter and suggest amendments for potential council approval to be placed on a November ballot of 2017. So they're moving forward with that for the charter review. We also had a work session where we, it's hard to put it lightly, but the Ryans, as you know, has a sign up says future site of a Chinese restaurant. That some of the members of the council and myself feel like that's probably, and staff feel that's not the most and best use of that property. So we have begun, the council and I gave a charge to the staff to begin an inquiry into other alternatives for, and I won't say condemnation, but we certainly want to look into the possibility of finding developers or other folks that might be interested in that property through a TIF. We can develop a TIF on our own as a city if we wish to, but we're only investigating right now. We're not really looking into it. I think what may be best described as a shot across the bow of the landowners to let them know that we're not pleased the direction that the property is going, and that we'd like to look into other potential alternatives and a partnership, and we're hoping that that they'll come to the table and speak to us about that. Another exciting thing, we just had our work session last night on the budget, and something that will affect this board or this commission is that we do have in the budget right now, hopefully it'll stay, Jim has proposed an associate planner that will assist him in the work, the constantly increasing work that he has to do. And so we're very excited. If you have a chance to talk to your council member, you might urge them to say, please, we really do need that associate planner because even our charges, like Jim just said, over the next couple of months, our agendas are going to get busy. So a lot of great things going on from the work sessions and other business of the city. Great budget session last night presented by Mr. Fearborn. We're really excited about the health of the community and the things they're going to be seeing coming down the pike, and that's all I have. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you, Mayor Turnbow. I think I'll bounce to the other end. Commissioner Meiske.
There's no way I could follow that, so I have no comment.
Tough job. I set you up. Well, Commissioner Crane.
Well, I've noticed this week that the Old Farmer's Almanac is predicting a frigid winter. And my wife saw 2 all-white woolly bear caterpillars in the yard this week. And I hear on the weather forecast it is supposed to drop into the 50s this weekend in August. We better have the snow plows ready.
Oh, my goodness. No thank you for that, Commissioner Crane. All right, Commissioner Berenson, can you follow that?
No, I'm not going to attempt. No comments.
Vice Chair Pfizer.
No comment.
Commissioner Anderson.
Just a quick note that it's great to see that we had a successful no vote on the Raymore ballot for the no tax increase, so for the 75K, so that was encouraging to see.
Thank you. Okay, well, didn't miss anybody, did I? That went quickly. Thank you to staff, Mr. Eanes, Mr. Zur, Mr. Krass, nice to see you. Mr. Cataret for doing double duty as has been the case recently. And also thank you to the commissioners and mayor for making the time to come this evening. I was a little worried there at 5 till whether we were going to have more than just a minimum quorum. The only thing I have, and I found it interesting, and Mr. Cataret, if you did not see this, I could leave a copy with you instead of putting it in the recycle barrel. Sunday, August 7th, Kansas City Star front page. The title, and I'm merely quoting from the paper, HOAs from Hell, Homeowners Associations. And this was a very long article that goes on inside, and actually there was some follow-up several days later, I think, just later in this week. I find it interesting because over the years working with Planning and Zoning Commission, you know, the city is not responsible for the restrictive covenants in a subdivision that are homeowners association responsibilities. However, the article did talk about various things, and I don't want to misquote, but the article did comment that cities typically like HOAs because that takes on some of the responsibility that the city would otherwise have to deal with. And so it was a very interesting article. It kind of ran to the extremes as always, but at any rate, if anybody, it sounds like Mr. Cataret saw this, if anybody else wants to take the article and read further, feel free. Otherwise, it'll end up, yes, I got to take her. Oh, okay. Well, it'll be here until I take it home and put it in recycle. And unless anyone has any other comments, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn this evening.
So moved.
I think that was Mayor Turnbow.
Second.
And I'm going to call second by Commissioner Meiske, because I heard him first. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. And that's got to be 7, because I'm not counting you twice. Thank you very much.
Nobody's wanting to stay.
You know, I'd have to stretch.